Okay, so this is a question that somebody has written in, and it boils down to how do you communicate with a Dharma friend who has dementia? Okay, so the person who wrote this has a very good friend who was really into the Theravada tradition, practicing a lot, and then she got dementia. And so when she goes to visit her friend, she does the Medicine Buddha puja, Medicine Buddha meditation and chanting out loud. And her friend responds to that and will spontaneously start chanting in Pali, And but otherwise, her interest in the Dharma has faded with the onset of dementia. And so sometimes her friend is very agitated, and her friend's partner asks them to call the person who wrote this, because her voice is soothing for her. And so she'll, when she's very agitated, she'll ask her, do you remember how to chant Namo Tassa Bhagavato, that chant? And then she'll remember it, and she'll chant it very beautifully, and it calms her down. And if she says the Medicine Buddha mantra on the phone, it really helps her. And at one time, she gave her a kata that I had given her, and said, this is a kata from the Abbey. And the friend really responded to that too. So she's concluding that physical Dharma objects seem to be able to help with dementia, but, is there anything else? I think when people have dementia, we keep expecting them to, somehow snap out of it. And be able to do the more complex thinking and so on. And of course, it depends. She didn't actually indicate in her message how long this person has had dementia or how serious it was, because there's so many different levels of dementia. And, at some levels, people are sometimes quite with it and sound very reasonable, and then they'll have moments of being out of it and getting confused. But then often it just deteriorates into, most of the time being confused, or eventually all of the time and not really even knowing who they are, where they are, who are the people around them. So I think it's going to depend a lot on how severe the dementia is, what stage the person is in, and also how they, what happens to them when they have dementia, because each person has dementia in a different way. Some people become very ornery and angry with dementia. I had one friend, and his mother was completely out of it. I mean, she was putting lipstick on her toothbrush and, putting on 7 pairs of pants. But her basic characteristic of being kind remained, because whenever my friend brought his mother something, she would take it around and share it with all the other old people on the ward, and so all the cookies or chocolate or whatever, so she was just still very kind and not angry or ornery at all. So, it depends a lot, I think, on every person, as usual, does things quite differently. But in general, what she observed here about physical Dharma things, objects that you can hold or sounds or things you can look at, I think they are going to have a very big effect. Because you can see also, that's how you start teaching children the Dharma. When children don't have complex thinking abilities, you start with physical objects, and you start with physical motions, and you start teaching them mantra and, all these things that you can do physically. And even with us, who are capable of more complex thinking, supposedly, we start off, the Nundro practices, a lot of them involve physical things, don't they? You're doing prostrations, you're doing mandala offerings, you're doing Dorji Kadro, you're making satsa, you're filling water bowls, and you're reciting mantras, and so a lot of them have to do with physical things or sounds or whatever, and so I think that kind of thing really helps to purify the mind, and it's much easier, until we're able to think deeply about the meaning of the Dharma. Then the Buddha starts us off with a lot of those physical things. And hopefully, those of us who have our mental faculties, as we're learning the more complex ways of thinking, you bring those into the practices. So you can think about bodhicitta while you're prostrating. You can meditate on emptiness while you're doing mandala offerings. You bring those things into the physical things and the recitations, yeah. But when somebody doesn't have that ability to do complex thinking anymore, at least the physical things and the sounds and images and so on, they evoke memories, and those memories are pleasant ones, because the person had some meditative experience or whatever. And also because they say that, seeing the Buddha or hearing the Buddha's words, the mantras and so on, it puts good imprints in the mind stream of the person, because those were the forms of the sounds that the Buddha manifested from deep states of meditation. Yeah, so it's very, very different than exposing the person to pictures of, the Olympics and the sound of rock music. Those are going to evoke completely different feelings than somebody who's demented. Okay, so so I think it's quite good to say those things, do those things, whatever the person is receptive to, whatever works to get them saying the mantras, get them, going like this, whatever works with them that's related to the Dharma, then that's very good. The practices to do before you get to dementia, yes, that's what you're doing right now. That's why it's so important for us to practice now when our mind works well, when we aren't suffering from dementia. Yeah, because the more we're able to practice now, then the more we deepen our understanding of the Dharma, the more we put that imprint in our mind by being really familiar with those things. So then, even if we start having dementia, those memories can still come back more. And I think also by exercising our mental abilities, by thinking about emptiness and the difficult subjects now, I think that can actually slow down dementia. Because I look with my teachers and they, I can see sometimes some weakening in mental capacities. A lot of that has to do with the physical health, but in many of them, the brain, the mind is still so sharp, and teaching, way into their 80s and, and so on, until it really becomes too difficult physically to actually do it. So that's why it's so important to really study and practice and meditate now. And even if it's difficult, we don't understand things, instead of saying, that's difficult, I won't understand it, and so we don't try, which is in a way kind of giving in, it's weakening our mental abilities, isn't it? It's like saying, well, I'm too lazy to go for a walk, so I don't. But then your physical abilities weaken because you aren't getting any exercise. Yeah? So while we have that opportunity, we should definitely use it. So that, number one. And then also, I think, doing Manjushri practice, the Buddha of wisdom, is going to be very helpful. But if you're just counting on reciting Manjushri's mantra, because that's easy to do to keep you from having dementia, you're wrong. You know, that is an adjunct. Yeah, but I think you really have to use your mental capacities now, you know, to keep that ability live. I mean, like they have all these things and puzzles that people should do when, you know, when they're middle-aged so that they retain their cognitive abilities when they're old. You think meditating on emptiness isn't more of an exercise than doing some of these puzzles that have absolutely no meaning at all? Yeah? You know, thinking about the Dharma is going to exercise your brain much more than these kinds of things. So, you know, even if something's difficult, we make an effort and it helps. Mm-hmm.
The Sisters of Holy Names, is that right? I don't think they're in the same location now, so they're kind of split up. But when they had their facility until just this fall, they had one section in it that had a dementia ward with the sisters there, and I visited there twice. And one thing they did that was consistent for some of the people that worked was, it was what Venerable was saying, but it was in a specific way where they made like a picture book, and often a person would be with the person, and the picture book was of their life, reminding them who they were. And I was thinking, for this person, maybe it would work. You have to see if they had pictures of them in the Dharma, you know, pictures of, you know, them at a holy place or something to remind them of where they had been. And then also, I used to work with a nurse who ran a Alzheimer's unit, and she said that oftentimes music was retained longer. And so, you know, if doing these mantras and, you know, and the chants that the person know, they could kind of keep that going longer. And Jeffrey Hopkins felt that the Manjushri mantra was actually healing for him when he had very serious problem. He said one week to us that part of the reason he feels he got his cognitive ability back was, you know, his great faith, I suppose, but he believes in the power of the Manjushri mantra.